the vehicles that were involved at the termination of the fleeing vehicle. The subject that was involved in this particular incident, the deceased, is a Robert Hubbard, who was born in 1978. Robert Hubbard has, 43 years old, and unfortunately has a pretty significant criminal history involving bank robbery and fleeing and eluding. He served prison for 2 times, was in prison from 2013 through 2016 for the bank robberies that occurred. I'll review some of the criminal history in a little more detail, but was also in custody from 2019 to 2020. He has a history of abusing cocaine and alcohol. He's been depressed since he was age 15. Lost a job in approximately 2008, which kind of just led to a downward spiral in the 2 incidents of bank robbery, one occurring in Sarasota and one occurring in Hillsborough County within 2 days of each other. He had multiple suicide attempts, attempting overdose on medications. He cut his own neck after a fleeing and eluding arrest in 2018 in Hillsborough County. The family suspected that he was recently abusing alcohol and prescription medication, kind of further exaggerating his current condition. This series of events started actually on the 29th. The family had received, or some cousins, a family member had received some disturbing text messages. They alerted the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department that kind of initiated what they call a street check report or a welfare check, trying to identify what the significant issues were, and I'll share some of those text messages to you. The revelation of that all kind of is happening relatively quickly, this chain of events. So shortly thereafter, at about 4:25 p.m., Mr. Hubbard has stolen a golf cart, and he used this golf cart to travel a short distance, where he then attempted to commit a carjacking that was unsuccessful while brandishing what appeared to be a firearm. However, he was able to then commit a successful carjacking and attain the vehicle that he was driving at the end of this incident. And this all happened about 6:30 p.m. Moving forward, about 8 o'clock in the evening, there's an attempted robbery that occurs at the Outback up at State Route 54 and Duck Slough Road. This is unsuccessful. He attempts to brandish a firearm again and commit a robbery. However, the person is able to kind of extricate themselves from the situation and escape. There's an attempted robbery that occurs at the Walmart at 54 and Little up in Pasco County. We believe, based on just the nature of the event and the timing of this event and the description, that this is also Mr. Hubbard. Moving forward, the next day on June 30th at about 2 p.m. in the afternoon, the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department receives a license plate reader hit indicating that vehicle is traveling inside of Pinellas County. They, of course, have received the BOLO that Hillsborough County has distributed, as all the law enforcement agencies in the region had received, indicating that Mr. Hubbard had committed many of these offenses and that he was potentially, going to want to go out in a kind of a suicide by cop scenario. The diligent search ends up resulting in an additional sighting that occurs in the area of Countryside Mall. This happens about 2:30 p.m. There is then kind of multiple sightings and attempts to stop and attempts to utilize stop sticks to stop the vehicle as it is leaving. And ultimately, the vehicle is kind of located. It kind of does a circular pattern throughout Pinellas County, kind of in between this Drew Street, Belcher, Sunset Point, and Safety Harbor corridor. Ultimately, there is a stop stick attempt at Philippi and Irwin, which we believe was successful. There were multiple attempts to stop stick the vehicle. This one we do believe was successful. The text messages I referenced that were received by a family member indicate comments like these that are very, very concerning. Already hit a bank, I'm gone, peace out. We've looked, we have not found any associated bank robbery or any type of bank involved in this particular thing, but it was a comment that is, of course, based on his criminal history, one of concern. Blocking all numbers, so tell whoever else, cops, I hope, going to be a nice shootout, and I'm killing cops or whoever gets in my expletive way. So clearly this was a man who had already decided what the chain of events was going to end at this particular day, and certainly law enforcement's need to locate him, stop him, and protect the public was clearly established. I want to share with you, this is a video from the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department helicopter as they were tracking the vehicle through Pinellas County and trying to get the person into custody. I'll let it play out. I'll try to narrate it a little bit, and then certainly at the end of the presentation, if you have any questions about any of the material I'm going to share with you today. All of the videos in this presentation will be provided to you at the end of this briefing on a jump drive, so you'll have these videos for yourself, and they'll be better than the caption inside the screen here.
He's going pretty slow, come up Pasco Drive.
So the vehicle is going to be this one right here, and it's traveling northbound on Philippi Parkway.
Now at this point, past Pinellas Ave.
And this is Enterprise Road that he's just about to pass. This is Deputy Smith in a marked Pinellas County Sheriff's Department cruiser, as you'll see him come up and make the initial stop. This will show.
Alright, the deputies stopped, give them the channel, they're challenging. Turn us out, gun. Eagle, shots fired, shots fired.
Shots fired, 1520.
Use cover, guys.
Excuse me. All right, I want to point out here, this frozen still from this particular video shows very clearly the positions of the officers, and I think it's going to be important later on when I show you some additional information, specifically these two pictures. This is Deputy Smith's cruiser, okay? This is Deputy Abbott and Corporal, excuse me, I got to pronounce the name, Corporal Helliston, okay, and then Deputy Flournoy. So they're all positioned here in a very proper tactical approach. But I want to show, when you go to these pictures, they're all going to be on the TV as well later on. You can see in this picture to my left of the TV screen and the one furthest to the left, clearly he is pointing in the direction of the other three deputies that are in the unmarked cars, and the picture on the right there is from the in-dash camera that we're going to watch next, clearly pointing that firearm directly at Deputy Smith. And this is Deputy Smith's cruiser as he's about to turn northbound onto Philippi Parkway. And I want to talk later on about how incredibly brave this move was. And this is basically the same officer, Deputy Smith, but from his body-worn camera footage. Deputy Smith experienced a jam with his firearm, and he cleared that about as efficiently as you can. These are the pictures as you see to the left of the TV screen, or my left of the TV screen. Clearly Mr. Hubbard is pointing what appears to be a firearm at the deputies that are in the unmarked vehicles, and then does the same thing as Deputy Smith is trying to ensure he does not get hurt in this particular incident. I referenced what I believe is incredibly brave of all these deputies, but especially Deputy Smith. He knows, based on the BOLO, the criminal actions of Mr. Hubbard, the repeated attempted to commit armed robberies, the fact that he is armed and puts himself in a very significant position of disadvantage when he goes to make that pit maneuver. To do that pit maneuver and to get into an opportunity where you can get in a protected posture behind some type of cover doesn't exist. That Mr. Hubbard could have, if he would have gotten a shot off, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes, had he gotten a shot, he had the ability to shoot these deputies if it was possible, or if he would have wanted to do it. So it is very, very, very incredibly brave what Deputy Smith did in this particular case, and the other 3 deputies as well. They were exposed to great danger in this particular case, and I think that's worth noting. There were 59 total rounds fired in this particular case. There were 32 9mm rounds and 27 .45 caliber rounds. We were able to recover casings for 29 of the 9mm rounds and 26 of the .45 caliber rounds. 2 of the deputies carry .45 caliber handguns, and 2 of the other deputies carry 9mm handguns, so it's pretty evenly dispersed. Deputy Robert Smith, he fired a total of 13 rounds, and Deputy Daniel Abbott fired 14 rounds. Those both were .45 caliber pistols. Corporal Hellstern, 19 rounds of 9mm ammunition, and Deputy Flornay fired 13 times. And I believe, based on what you've seen in the video, you can see the need to neutralize a subject who's pointing a firearm at you. This isn't TV. People don't fall down immediately the moment they're hit by bullets. After being hit by bullets, this gentleman was able to run and potentially could have got to cover if he had not fallen down. Now, when I say, could have shot, this is the firearm that was recovered at the scene to the left side of the, or my left side of the screen, or your left side of the screen. It is turns out to be a BB gun. Now, on the right is a Beretta M9 or a 92F. It's a very common pistol. And if you can tell the difference at the speed in which this thing unfolded and the distance in which these officers are, then you are going to have the eyesight of an eagle, because that is next to impossible. So there is no reason that these deputies would have any knowledge that this firearm was not real, and certainly Mr. Hubbard presented it into the deputies as if it was real, and unfortunately, based on his mental state, I think he surely knew what he was doing. The injuries that Mr. Hubbard suffered was a perforating wound. It entered into his right thigh and went out to the back of the right thigh, so it's coming into the front of his body and going out the rear. He had another wound that was in the right side of his neck and came out near the rear as well. This was probably the most fatal round that he received. He had a perforating wound that entered his upper left arm and then lodged into the arm once again. These first 3 rounds, I can't tell you the order in which they entered his body, but I can tell you that all 3 of them entered from the front, which is indicative of the time when we see him brandishing the firearm and pointing it at the deputies. The last wound I'll mention is a perforating wound that entered the left shoulder and kind of traveled through the back. It's indicative of my interpretation of when he's turning away and trying to, start to flee. That's the briefing I have for you today. I just wanted to point out, though, this is, had that firearm been real and this person wanted to shoot these deputies, they were at a significant disadvantage. And there is no information that I've seen to this date that indicates whether these deputies had any other option other than to use deadly force to defend themselves. I'd even further state, based on the activities of Mr. Hubbard leading up to this particular contact, there was an exigent need to protect the public. This person was on a depression crime spree, and there were certainly citizens that were victimized by him within the course of 2 days, four victims. So significantly important that he be stopped. I think all these deputies really demonstrated admirable courage, and I think all of us in Pinellas County should be very proud of that. I will say, we still have some leads that we're finishing up, so it will be some time before we make a final conclusion or final determination. But from the evidence that's before you today, you can see that is very, very overwhelmingly shows that the officers had, number one, an exigent responsibility to take this person into custody, and that when they tried to do so, they were presented with a scenario that clearly put them in a position of being in fear of their life and needing to defend themselves. So I'd be more than happy to try to answer any questions. And the sheriff is here as well, and he's more than happy to answer anything that's administrative in nature.
Chief, as you mentioned, this happened so quickly. When the deputy finally was able to maneuver and Hubbard got out of the vehicle, was there some type of exchange that happened?
Other than the exchange of gunfire, no. I mean, he exited the vehicle and brandished that firearm so quickly that the deputy, that firearm was pointed at him before he could even get his seatbelt off and get the firearm up. The deputy was forced to fire through the windshield of the car to protect himself. He couldn't even get out of the car. So that just shows you the rapidness in which it occurred.
Chief, there are videos from all over the country we see every day of police shootings. Many of them leave a viewer scratching their head, wondering, boy, I don't know, or maybe the person wasn't a threat, or, you know, you have all kinds of conclusions, different gray areas. Is this as clear of a case as there can be when it comes to a justified police shooting?
I haven't, I would say that the evidence is overwhelming, that the deputies were in a position that they had to do what they had to do. I would say that these investigations aren't only about that, though, too. These investigations are also about trying to figure out, you know, what happened to how we got here. How could we have maybe handled things left a bang? You know, certainly, you know, I'm not here to villainize Mr. Hubbard either. I mean, he was a kid that's been depressed since he's 15, and unfortunately got dragged down in drugs and alcohol, and which further exaggerated the depression. And from doing this business long enough, I know there's a family behind that that's really struggling.
Yeah, and I know the sheriff is here too, but when it comes to the reactions of those officers and deputies, are they, for those of us who don't know and aren't deputies and officers, are they reacting based on their training, or is this just, you know, we gotta go, all hands on deck?
No,
You know,
the poised manner in which, at least, you know, I showed you Deputy Smith. There's no panic. There's poise. He's following what he was trained to do. I think, you know, Sheriff would probably reiterate the same thing. This is what you want to see as a result of the heavy investment we make in training, because they don't happen every day, right? So you don't necessarily get to see how you're really going to react in real life. These deputies acted, I think, about as consistent with the way that I believe they were trained based on the information we know to date. You know, he can talk to his training, but this is about as good a police work as you can see.
and they were all told that this person had made the threat of, I'm gonna be in a shootout potentially with officers before they pulled them over, correct?
The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office did a good job. From the moment that they got that initial check on the welfare, they disseminated and shared information, and certainly these dots were being connected as they were occurring.
And the deputies on the ground knew that?
Yes.
And Chief, you were talking about that Hubbard had already decided his fate that day. Can you talk about the magnitude of what that means when you're involved in a multi-county crime spree? You have residents, you have your deputies and officers. What does that mean when someone makes that decision?
Well, the mere fact that they make that decision doesn't mean that we obviously want to accommodate it, okay? You know, I've worked with the sheriff a long time. My staff knows that we certainly believe that preservation of life is our highest priority. And even that preservation of life involves people that may be in a depressed state and try to do something stupid. But unfortunately, in some scenarios, they put you in a position where you just have no other option. Certainly, these deputies they're not sacrificial lambs. And they have to go home to their families if they can. I think it's probably one of the things that's probably more difficult than people realize for police officers. I think they think police officers, you know, we're out playing cowboys and Indians. None of these deputies want to shoot the guy. And they have to deal with that there was no other alternative. That's tough. It's tough.
Chief, you said some of the things that you were going to look into that might have been interventive. Can you describe what that is? Is that mental health? Is that some of the things that still just the eyes that need to be dotted, T's crossed?
Well, I don't certainly mean to imply that, you know, there was a missed opportunity, but I always think that as we do with all the things we do, we want to look at the totality of the circumstances. You know, what was missed? What could have somebody have done? Maybe it's nothing. You know, there were opportunities. Certainly, family members cared about this person. Mr. Hubbard was not unloved, and there was other things going on in his life. His mom had passed away from natural causes, and her birthday was on June 26th. So, you know, that's kind of aggravating and mitigating those things. It's probably just one of those, you know, were the right resources provided at the right time. But I can tell you from this experience, many, many times the right resources are provided, and addiction and depression are really, really bad things that can't always be fixed. I've been favoring the right side. And
Want to say anything further from the sheriff? Can you just tell us what the status is, if the deputies have maybe spoken about, as the chief was alluding to, their reaction to all of this?
Sure, you gotta bear with my laryngitis here, but I'll try and get it out. So all the deputies are doing fine. All but one are back to work. My policy is that we look at the incident, make a preliminary determination as to whether it is within policy and within the law, and as long as I feel comfortable that it is, preliminarily, and then they see the agency psychologist, and as long as they're cleared by the agency psychologist, I leave it up to the deputies when they want to come back. Everybody handles these things differently. For some people, it's best for them that they come back to work right away. Some want more time. One of the deputies wants a little bit more time, so I'll give him as much time as he wants. He's going to come back next week. It also sends a message in a case like this that we're going to support the cops when they do the right thing, and leave it up to them, because as Chief Slaughter said, and all the evidence here points to, they did an exceptional job. Very proud of them. And another component that we haven't talked about here, but Chief Slaughter alluded to it, that we all need to recognize and be very proud of, is the training staff, because a lot of effort, a lot of work goes into training the deputies. They train all the time, and it showed here. There's a lot more video that you haven't seen that shows what happened after the initial shooting and after Hubbard went down, and how they approached, and they got a shield, and he did it very tactically. And as soon as they were able to safely approach and make sure that he didn't have access to the gun, immediately they went into life-saving mode. And they took out first aid kits. They took out everything that you would do to try and save the man's life. And they were talking to him and say, stay with me, stay with me. And they were really trying to save the guy's life, because they didn't want to have to do what they did, but they had to save their own life. So it's very important, and the training really kicked in, and it really showed.
Will you use these tapes to potentially help train other deputies and officers along the way?
Yeah, of course. We learn from everything. We learn from the good. We learn from the stuff that isn't so good. This is an example here from everything that I've seen with it. It's pretty much textbook as to how it should be handled. And of course, our training staff has access to it. I've already talked to them about it. And for new hires coming in, because it's one of the unfortunate realities of the job. And this is, as Chief Slaughter said, really, this is a sad situation, because this guy went out on a mission. He knew what he was going to do. And you don't, just look at that photo. That's all you need to see right there, is look at those two photos when he is taking a gun at point shoulder, as we call it, two hands on the gun. First one he points off as at Deputy Abbott, and he points off at Deputy Smith, who is, Evan, is as close as we are right here. And Smith is in a bad spot. He's sitting in essence, a cockpit of a cruiser with a computer on one side, seat belted in. And, thank goodness that wasn't a real gun, because there's no doubt that Smith would have taken rounds.
Did they purposely stop him in a place where there were no people around?
At that point, is that was fortuitous. At that point, he just needed to be stopped. And what he was doing that day, and I was listening to this thing unfold on the radio. I'd been listening to this for a half hour before it happened. Is that no doubt in my mind, based upon the conduct, is he was looking to do another robbery. That's why he was at the Countryside Mall parking lot. He was in other strip stores, and he was casing these parking lots around Pinellas County, getting ready to do it, trying to do another robbery. Based on his actions, he just needed to be stopped at whatever it would take to get him stopped. But I appreciate you asking. The deputies are doing fine overall. But anytime you have to take a life, it's a hard thing. It's a bad thing. But overall, they're doing well.
When the whole idea of a use of deadly task force came about, it was obviously a couple of years ago, after a whole summer of looking at doing things differently. And many people said, in some cases, this is just going to vindicate people. It's actually a really good thing. You'll be able to take a look at this. It'll be outside of your own department. Somebody else with a separate pair of eyes will look at it. Is this just one of those cases that you look at that and say, now I'm glad we have this?
Well, unquestionably, I'm glad we have it. It works out very well for all of us. It works out well for the Sheriff's Office, for Clearwater Police Department, St. Petersburg Police Department, Pinellas Park, everybody else. And having that objective outside investigation and outside, and it truly is. We don't get involved in theirs, they don't get involved in ours. I'm here, I'm talking about the administrative stuff, I'm not talking about the investigative stuff. And, and also don't forget about, there's also a parallel investigation that occurs independently, truly independently by the state attorney's office. So I think we have a really good setup and a really good system here in Pinellas County. And that, independent and parallel investigation by the state attorney And it gets a little cumbersome, but it's good because it shows the diligence and the due diligence and the depth. So all of these deputies and all of these witnesses, everybody that witnessed this, that night, they have to go through 2 sets of interviews. One with the investigators, in this case from the Clearwater Police Department, who are conducting a homicide investigation, a criminal investigation, and another with the state attorney, assistant state attorneys and their investigators, because they're truly separated. So, and then everybody sees where they come to at the end. And, you know, and these in Pinellas County, we have a history of this, unfortunately. These are not rubber stamps. These are full-fledged, full-throated, diligent investigations. If you remember back, you know, one of the worst things I ever had to do back, you know, it was 2015, we had a deputy down in Madeira Beach, and it was a shooting, and we ended up arresting him because it was not a good shooting. And this before the task force, and there's no doubt in my mind that Chief Slaughter, Chief Holloway, Chief Hayworth from Pinellas Park, that all of us, we're just gonna do our job. And wherever the chips fall, they fall. And we're gonna call it the way it is. And the people of Pinellas County can rest assured that what they're gonna get based on this task force is a complete, thorough, objective investigation. And when they do it right, like they did here, we're gonna say that we're very proud of them, they did it right, and we're very thankful that they went home safely. And if somebody messes up, then we'll deal with it.
I know the cameras are expensive, the body cams, but how do you feel that you have the body cams to see in detail what happened and without putting investigation to clarify what happened?
Yeah, I mean, you know, in this day and age with video, we got video cameras every place, you know, everybody's videotaping us, so we might as well videotape everybody else. You know, it's just kind of the way it works, is that everybody just, and so the body cameras, the dash cameras, you know, we have in all of our cars, we have 560 patrol cars, and every single patrol car has a dash camera, and every deputy's wearing a body camera. Plus, in this case, we had the helicopter video. So we had about as much video as you can possibly have in the entire incident, really. There wasn't anything about this incident, you know, and you guys will move on to the next story. It'll become, you know, an afterthought. But at some point in time when it's available, I mean, somebody cares, watch all the video, watch what these guys did. All of it's captured on body camera video, all the life-saving measures and all the tactics that were used and everything. So we're capturing, in all these incidents, we're capturing from beginning to end in a multitude of media in different forms. All right, thanks.
One more question.
Yeah.
So sorry. Did Hubbard shoot any BB pellets back at the officers?
I'll let Chief Slaughter answer.
We have not found any evidence that he did, and when we recovered it, there was no BB ammunition in the gun.
All right, thank you.
Chief, one more question. There was a shooting at Bay Cove Apartments. Could you give us any update in regards to that shooting about a few hours ago?
Oh, yeah, sure. About 2:10 a.m., we responded to Bay Cove Apartments. At this particular time, there's not too much I can release. I can tell you that we believe we've identified all the parties that are involved, and we are conducting interviews and tracking down a couple people at this particular point. We don't believe the public's in danger. We believe it to be more of a domestic-related situation. So other than that, I really can't let you have any other information. I'm sorry. Anything else?
Just to be clear, the state attorney's office will have the final say, but this was a presentation of what you know up to this point, is that correct?
Over the cough, did you say the final say?
The state attorney's office will have the final say about whether or not the shooting was justifiable?
Yeah, they'll make their own determination on justifiable. Now, certainly not applicable in this particular case. What the state attorney, up to what they do, doesn't preclude me from making my own arrest, okay? So I would if I felt if we were in a situation where we had to make an arrest, I could make an arrest and then the state would review it at that time and they would make a final determination at that point. So it's more about prosecution. Their final determination is based on prosecution. We both have the authority to arrest. Any other?
Thank you.
Huh?
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.